Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a priest! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, joining me to break down the second week, or third week technically, but second week of the main games in the NRL Trial Series in that Preseason Challenge Cup is my good mate, Sixties. The Eels are taking on the Tigers this week, Sixties, and there's a lot to play for heading into round one. But there is a little bit more to talk about too, because in classic news podcast fashion, there was a massive story that developed almost immediately after we'd finished wrapping up our podcast on Tuesday night. We'll get to that, but first, as always, checking in on you, mate. How's the week treated you since we recorded on Tuesday night?
Mate, well, I'm fresh from the captain's run. Went and had a look at the Eels go through their paces today. Looks like it's, and I don't talk about what happens at captain's run or training once we're in season, but yeah, it all seemed to go pretty smoothly, and looking forward to seeing these fellas in action.
Better training session than South Sydney, eh?
Yes, and we'll get to that momentarily. Just before we do, just a reminder to like and subscribe to whatever platform that you are listening to this on. Also, a reminder too that the elections for Parramatta Leagues Club directors, the voting closes tomorrow, that being Friday, because if you're listening to this on a Friday or a Saturday, it might be too late. It closes Friday, 5 p.m. So please make sure that you exercise your right as a Parramatta Leagues Club member to vote in that election. Also make sure that you cast your vote in the special resolutions that are updating and tidying up the Parramatta Leagues Club constitution. And we're urging you to vote for the special resolutions, and we need a 75% vote for the resolutions to actually get that across the line. So, yes, please make sure that you do that. If you want to understand a little bit more about those resolutions, you can listen to our special podcast with Parramatta Leagues Club President Greg Monaghan, which we recorded just over a week ago. Well, no, it was actually a week ago, wasn't it, John? No, the week before.
Week before, yes. Yeah, the trials got our time clocks a little bit out of sync there.
Yes, yeah, just losing track of the weeks and the podcasts there. But yeah, so just over almost 2 weeks ago. So, and it's very good, very succinct coverage of the special resolutions and why it's important to get those changes. John, also another reminder too about that if anyone wants to jump on board and sponsor the Cumberland Throw, it's we are
big or small
open to discussions. If you're an Eels supporter, you got your own business, or you work for a business that has a lot of Eels supporters there, please feel free to give us a call. Get in touch through our email or socials, and we'd love to talk to you. We've had a number of messages sent to us about the merch. People are very keen to get involved with buying merchandise. So yes, we'll get onto that and get some merchandise out as soon as possible. And also a reminder that we do have our Patreon. Mm-hmm. And we don't plug that. We haven't been plugging that in the past. It's there at the bottom of the main page and articles. So if you like what we do and you want to support us, then just hit the Patreon, and then you can donate whatever you would like to donate, just to help ensure that we continue to be able to provide this content about the Parramatta Eels for you. And John, yeah, we just touched briefly, and we're not going to dive too deep into it because this is the preview podcast, but the wretched luck for the South Sydney Rabbitohs, it broke after we recorded, as you said. So I'll just throw it back to you for those details.
Yeah, I was half tempted to hit the news team stinger just because it is a serious piece of news but we'll forego that this week and save it for the usual news podcast on Tuesday. Yeah, 60s. The Parramatta Eels, they've certainly paid their dues when it comes to the injury tax in the last 2 seasons after making that grand final in 22. And South Sydney are following in our path. Last year, they were mired by injury the same way the Eels were, and it doesn't get any better to start this season. We recorded Tuesday night and woke up Wednesday morning to rumours that there had been an Achilles rupture for captain and genuinely outstanding player Cameron Murray, alongside concerns about a hamstring injury for their star fullback Latrell Mitchell. And then shortly after that, as the want to be with the rumour cycle and the news cycle, they converged and it broke that it was indeed an Achilles rupture for Cam Murray, and he's looking at 5+ months out on the sideline, which is not a surprise. And Achilles is up there with the worst that you can do when it comes to injuries in any sort of professional sport that involves your legs. Meanwhile, today as we record on Thursday, we've had confirmation that Latrell Mitchell is looking at 2 months out on the sideline for serious hamstring strain. Full grade tear, I suppose, at that point. So it is far from ideal for what South Sydney has gone through right now. They're also joined by the Cronulla Sharks, by the way, with Sione Katoa out for, I think, 5 months of a shoulder reconstruction. So some serious hammer blows being dealt to teams with big aspirations this year. Obviously, South Sydney, like Parramatta, looking to bounce back from a really low finish on the ladder, and Cronulla still trying to forge a way into the deep into the finals and prove themselves to be legitimate title contenders. So both teams there taking very, very heavy blows to frontline stars there.
Quick question for you, John, because you've had some Achilles issues in the past yourself. They've got that 5-month timeline now. When you came back, you had both operated on, didn't you?
Mine was a little bit different because mine was preventative. I had a bilateral Achilles release, so they went in behind the back of the heel where the Achilles tendon is and made incisions on both sides to release the tendon and cause it to stretch out naturally, or not naturally, but release with assistance. And so for me, it was a 6 to 8 week process in walking casts. So I had both. I was stomping around in 2 walking casts for the better part of 2 months, but I was able to. The first day post surgery sucked. It was like the back of my legs were on fire. When you go to the hospital, and they give you the pain medication, right? They give you the rating of like 1 to 10, how bad your pain. I'm like, it's close to a 10. It feels like my legs are on fire. But I was fortunate that a couple of days after that, I was able to be back at work, stomping around in the fruit and veg shop. So I was doing okay back then, but my rehabilitation was more learning how to walk again in that regard, just because once I was out of the cast, it was very weird, like foreign, having that degree of non-tension, I suppose, for my legs. So for Cam Murray, it's going to be different, though, because he's had a full-on reattachment of the Achilles if he has a rupture, and he has to get to a far greater degree of explosive conditioning to return. So I do not envy him. It's not a pleasant injury, and I didn't have it snap, but the stories of it snapping and feeling that recoil, like the actual curling of the Achilles, is it makes your skin crawl.
I just wonder whether that 5-month time frame.
It feels optimistic.
Yeah. It's you'd almost. 5 months is the majority of the season anyway.
Yeah.
You'd have to think he'll be doing exceptionally well if we see him again this season, and then you have to think, well, if they're going to be without undoubtedly their number one player, and then a player who was ostensibly their number one strike player for a couple of months, it's going to be a tough ask for the Rabbitohs this year. And look, I had some question marks over them in the first place, and I just think to myself, this, I'm prepared to put a line through them. I was putting a line through them anyway. I am prepared to put a line through them, and I'd be interested what our listeners think as well. I know our listeners don't mind jumping on board and adding their opinions on the post. But, let us know what you think. Are you ready to put a line through the Rabbitohs? John, very quickly, are you ready to put a line through them?
I don't think you can, being generous. just because of how unpredictable sports can be. And we saw, Leicester City in years gone by stun the EPL with a roster that would be comparable to what Souths have now relative to the playing field, especially, the EPL, how top-heavy it is. So, strictly speaking, no, you can't put a line for them, but you could pretty much put a line for them, right? That is a huge handicap to overcome.
You can't, but you can.
Yeah. And, Wayne Bennett's a great coach at getting everything he can out of a roster, especially when that siege mentality is there and backs are against the wall. So I wouldn't be surprised if South Sydney pull off some legitimately surprising results in those first couple of months. But Latrell's absence is going to hurt him. What's worse is that Latrell is coming off a bad hamstring injury once he returns, so he's not going to be hitting the ground running both literally and figuratively. He's going to have to work his way back towards his best, and we know that Latrell can take a bit of time to warm up that engine, so he won't be back to his best in the first couple of games, which then puts further pressure on him. And behind all that, they're missing a guy that is not just a work rate stud, but also a difference maker in the middle in Cam Murray. And there are a lot of big moments and big games that are won by players like Cam Murray. And him not being there is going to be crucial, I think, in a lot of crunch time games for the Rabbitohs.
Yeah, those games that have those moments where the match could swing one way or another. If you haven't got a key player like Murray, your chances of ending up on the right side of the ledger are greatly reduced by their absence. So, okay, mate. Well, I think we might press on now with the previews. We've only got 2 matches to preview. That with the bye being there for both the girls' Elite Pathways teams and also for the Harold Mats. So we've just got the SG Ball and we've got the NRL. There are other matches going on, which we should mention. There's a double header out at Lidcombe with the Eels Jersey Flegg and New South Wales Cup squads going through their paces out there. We don't have team lists on those teams, unfortunately, but we will give you the details on that as we go through this podcast. But, John, let's jump into the SG Ball first of all.
Yeah, so this one kicks off on Saturday, 3:30 p.m. out at Eric Tweedale Stadium. The lone junior rep fixture, as you pointed out, 60s, and part of a back-to-back-to-back set of fixtures on Bar TV for fans of the Blue and Gold. You can catch that Flegg and Cup trial at 5 and 7 p.m. respectively after this online. So you got wall-to-wall football for the Eels this Saturday. The Flegg had the great escape in round 3 as they got past the Sharks with back-to-back tries in the final 6 minutes to win 22-18. They now host one of the table-topping teams in the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Eels look like this. At fullback, you got Nathan Howard. On the wings, Dom Ferrugia and Larima Rokasuka. Unders Johansson at left centre. And then Corey Lee getting his first start at right centre this week, 60. So one change to the back line. Lorenzo Talatina and Lincoln Fletcher reunite unchanged at the 6 and 7 respectively. In the front row, Bo Lucian and Rada Talangi are the 2 props with Lockie Koinakis at dummy half. Josiah Funarayuta is back on the right edge, which is a massive boost for this team. Josiah had that NRL preseason 60s and impressed, so he was out for a couple of weeks there and now comes back in to really bolster those back row stocks. Chris Petrus will be on the left edge. He's been really impressive there across the first 3 or so weeks of play. And then speaking of impressive, Max Popo at lock forward. He's been really good for the Eels in that middle role there. On the interchange, you got Tom Summer, Wesley Picodi, Elijah Shane Tapa'u is back as well, making his 2025 debut. He played for the Eels last year. Obviously was a bit nicked up coming to the season 60, so another big inclusion there in the rotation. And then moving back to the interchange after starting on the right edge last week is Trace Beattie. And I thought Trace was pretty handy playing on the edges last week, but understandably he is 2IC to Josiah Funarayuta on that edge. The extended roster features Aidan Kaborian and Kai Wilson. Like I said, 3:30 p.m. Eric Tweedale Stadium. Catch it on TCT with the live blog or on Bar TV if you want to watch along. And I'm just looking at this Souths team. We always like to try and pick out any second-gen players or players that we might just know. There's a Jennings there, but I have no idea if it's a relation. What else we got there? 60s. There's a Fui, but that's a surname, not a first name. Nothing that really stands out here as a rugby league blue blood there. So Rabbitohs coming in undefeated. Eels also undefeated 60s, but it's 2 wins and a draw, so 2.5 wins on the ladder. But an important one here if they're going to stay in contact with the upper echelons of that SG ball competition.
Yeah, it'd be nice this week if we can sit in a different position to the usual edge of the seat location of the last couple of weeks. It's not a comfortable spot to be watching from. And as was the case last week, however, with the matches being played simultaneously, I was just jumping from live blogging to checking your updates out at Cabramatta. So I'm trying to watch and give the match description on the Tarsha Gale
and play along with the
same time.
Mats and Ball. Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, and of course there were some people that realised that I'm there blogging and they're coming over and asking me what's the score in the ball, thinking that it's an easy process for me to flip over and check that out, whereas I'm trying to type and navigate on my phone, which is not an easy process in the when you're blogging on the website. So my apologies if I couldn't get scores to people as quickly as they were requesting last week, but it's looking forward to this one. Looking forward to actually being able to watch it live too, John, because that's been an issue with the last couple of weeks with the different venues and the boys and the girls and being on at simultaneous times. So instead of watching the replay, I'll get out there and watch it live.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as for the team themselves, you know what? For mine, it's just a matter of eliminating some simple errors, and they've got the physicality, they've got the skill set there. We saw last week. I thought that those last few minutes, I like the Harold Mats. I thought the SG Ball team was still the better team on the day.
I agree.
But it looked like the Sharks had gone close to wrapping it up when they kicked that penalty goal in the last 10 minutes and jumped out to a 6-point lead. And then that try from Rokasuka, how he got that ball grounded from the position that he was in over the corner post. I mean, we see it all the time with backs these days with the wingers, but he is an under-19s player who's executing it perfectly, came at the right time. But then two key moments for mine in the last try that they manufactured, and we talked about it a little bit in the news podcast, but first of all, when we had Anders Johansson take the tackle in that, when he made that long break on the left edge and was tackled 10 metres out. And you often see in Pathways football that the players are looking for a big play, and you make a long break, you get into the defence 10 metres out. The temptation's going to be there to throw a bit of a specky, but he didn't. He held the ball. And then when the pass came centre field, we had Ryder Talangi, who had the common sense of, just letting the ball hit the legs, control it, pick it up, take the tackle, because the tackle after that was when they went wide. Again, through Talatina, the ball's absolutely bulleted out to Dom Farrugia. He's over for the try. Now, it could have broken down at either of those two moments. It didn't. I think that spoke about the overall mentality of the team, that they, we've had those mistakes, but I think the coach has done a very good job with their footy IQ, because that was a couple of mature moments from both players concerned. So if that's what he's instilling in the team, then he's doing a very, very good job.
Yeah, like I said in that review we did on Tuesday, the sort of the grit and the gumption to come back from that position, alongside what we saw against the Roosters, who are shaping up to be a very good team in their own right. That was a hard-fought game where there was a lot of redlining in the ruck that the Roosters were able to do to keep themselves in that contest. The Eels didn't lose composure. And they didn't get the win back then, but they did get the win here. And between that draw and that win, I think they're going to be some crucial results down the track. This week, Corey Lee gets his chance over Lockie Vella, who's been rock solid at right centre. So Corey's got some reasonable shoes to fill in there, but he's been good for us in the junior pathways in the past, so I'm not too concerned. But the inclusion of Josiah is huge. One of the star players here. I mean, you don't do an NRL preseason when you're SG Ball eligible for no good reason. But likewise, Elijah Shane Tapau also gives you a lot of size on the bench. Good to see him back in there, and probably just gives a little bit more better balance to the bench, I think, too. Because Summer and Picodi are very, very industrious workers for the Eels. I really like their work through the ruck and their ability to play a little bit wider at times as well. And Trace Beattie, coming off his debut, I thought was very good in the edges. So I like the balance of the team, 60s. Anders Johansson, I thought, was excellent last week. He's been good to start the season as well. He's a big centre on that left side of the field. In his first year of SG Borna, he was Harold Matts last year, so he's doing really well there. Just like this team. They're well coached. They've got a good balance of talent. Probably not as many stars as we've seen in some other SG Ball teams in recent seasons. Obviously, the 23 team jumps out given that they won the title, and we've seen plenty of NRL talent come from there already. Going back 2017 or 2018 it was as well, was a very talented squad as well. But this team is really well-rounded. So I'm looking forward to this one. Top of the table clash is always a good litmus test for our boys. And they're playing off home field advantage, which is nice after being on the road for the first couple of games this year. And I think they can get the job done here.
Yeah, I think Coach Mitch Lewis, he's got to be happy with that composure that was shown in the back end of the game. He's obviously would have dealt with a bit of the looser play, the error aspect of it, because it was certainly errors that cost them the game the week before. But just to have that composure, and because that really starts to talk to the not just the footy IQ, which I mentioned before, John, but also just the resilience within the team, the resilience, the composure. So, well done to the SG Ball team. Predictions, John, you're going to go for a win for the Eels?
I think so. I think the reinforcements to the starting and interchange rosters there are significant. I know that Lockie's out in the centres, but I really like what Corey's got a chance to do there. He's been really versatile for the Eels in recent seasons in Harold Matts, so he'll probably do the same here in the SG Ball. And I just think having a bit of home field for the second week in a row will be really nice for our boys, and a chance to settle themselves and make a real shot at getting back to the top of the table.
Yep, and I'm gonna back them to get the job done as well. Not going to go with any margins or anything like that. The Rabbitohs are obviously a fine team, so I think any winning score is going to be a good score this week. Okay, let's jump into the NRL clash.
Yeah, so we would love to give you some coverage of the Flegg and Cup trials, but we don't have team lists, and we know some of the players involved, don't we, 60s, in terms of guys like Will Latu and Raz Namva and Tiankan Brown, who all played last week in the NRL trial, but we do not have team lists. So follow along on Bar TV, and we might even have a live thread for both games where people can just comment and talk about the game there. I don't know if we can call the game as so much, but let people have a chat. But at 8 o'clock p.m. on Friday night, we have the culmination of the preseason for the Parramatta Eels as they go to Leichardt to take on the West Tigers. Eels, technically, very much in the hunt for the Preseason Challenge Cup title, 60s, but there's like 5 or 6 teams that put pastings on their rivals last week, so it's a wide open shootout. I think the Broncos are ahead right now because they got the maximum amount of bonus points. They're on 15 points from week 1 in terms of the ladder before you talk about tiebreakers. So Eels on 14 points alongside a few other teams, but I'm not too worried about the Preseason Challenge Cup, to be honest. Just get through without injuries. So we're at Leichardt here. There's a bit of outrage about ticket prices. Did you see the article, 60s?
I've been seeing plenty of articles since the ticket prices went on sale. As a matter of fact, what I was seeing today looked like it was a cheaper price than what I was reading a few weeks ago. I was talking to someone at training today, and he bought a family pass for 4, 2 adults, 2 kids, and it was $176.
Oh my God. For a trial at Leichardt.
For a trial game at Leichardt, a family pass costing $176. Now, it was going to be his first time at Leichardt Oval, so he wanted to make sure that he got to see a game out there because, you know, as a lot of people say, the eighth wonder of the world. Everyone knows my opinion. That's the reason it's a wonder is it's a wonder it hasn't been bulldozed. But they're getting the much-needed upgrade for Leichardt Oval. I know a lot of people still like those old traditional suburban grounds. I just think if you've got, in this day and age, you shouldn't be charging those sort of prices for people who don't have a seat to watch it. You know, if you're just going to have to stand or sit on a patch of grass, you should barely be charging anything, in all honesty. And I know that might sound, you know, in conflict with the working class roots of rugby league. But as far as I'm concerned, those sort of ticket prices, they go with actually having a reserved seat.
Yep.
And they go with not just having a reserved seat, but having a good view and decent facilities to go with it, which is not what you get when you go to Leichardt Oval. And I'm sorry to be harsh about Leichardt Oval, but hey, Tigers supporters, it's getting an upgrade because it bloody needs it. It's a disgrace of an oval. And we go there on a regular basis because they hold junior rep finals there every year.
Cup as well as there.
And yeah, so, you know, look, I've been there countless times. I couldn't count how often I've been there because I'd been going to Leichardt Oval probably since about the age of 15, 16, going and watching Parramatta games there. But I'm now at the stage where I don't go to NRL games there because, you know, I like to be able to leave a venue within 2 or 3 hours of the game being over. So it is, you know, try to park and navigate your way out of a place like Leichardt. As you know, John, you can be at a game at Leichardt where there's a crowd of 1,000, 1,500 people watching junior reps finals, and still it can take you an hour to get out of the precinct there. Yeah. It's insanity. It's just insanity. You really have to know your back streets there to be able to get out of there in a reasonable period of time. But so if they get a crowd that's above 5,000 people, well, you know, you're going to have a bit of fun with the traffic. But anyway, let's talk about the footy, not moan about an eyesore like Leichardt Oval and the price they're charging. Did I hear right too that it's the NRL that sets those prices?
I'm not sure because that was part of the discourse. So potentially you might be right that the NRL might have a baseline mandate of what they expect tickets to be in trials, in which case there's more people out of touch than we thought if that's the issue there.
Oh, they got it wrong. They're not reading the room in that regard because the number of people who have voiced their disgust and outrage about those sort of ticket prices, you're really keeping people away. That's what it goes down to. There are people who would go to the game, and for the sake of a few dollars, you're preventing people from connecting with their teams and with the season that's about to unfold. So, NRL, if you've been involved in setting the prices, you got it wrong. And if that's wrong, and if it's the Tigers that were involved in setting the prices, I'm dumbfounded.
Agreed.
So, yeah, let's maybe run through the teams.
And well, the other thing that makes it worse is that you're paying premium tickets for a trial that's not featuring all the stars, because Parramatta and West Tigers have, for various reasons, it's not just putting stars in cotton wool. They've both got reason to rest certain players here, and we'll go through the Tigers lineup first, then the Eels. But at fullback,
just to that note, the Panthers are playing the other game. Are they not, against Manly?
Yes, and Penrith's NRL team is obviously going over to Vegas, so they've left the Cup team here to take on the final week of the preseason challenge. So, yeah, it's interesting scheduling by the NRL to do something like that. You'd thought they'd find a way to work it around, but apparently not. Let's go through the teams, though. At fullback for the Tigers is Heath Mason. We've seen him in the junior rep 60s. New recruit Dryle Skelton is on one wing with Charlie Staines on the other sideline. Stafford To'a and Brent Naden are in the centres, so it's not their full-strength lineup in the back line by any measure. In the halves, Lockie Galvin gets his second run of the preseason. He'll partner Adam Duahi in the halves with no Jerome Luai, so no Sunia Taruva, no Jerome Buller. Jareem Buller, sorry, not Jerome. You got a Jerome Luai and a Jareem Buller. So plenty of missing strike in that back line there for the Tigers. In the front row, you've got Terrell May and Fanua Pole. Young dummy half Talon De Silva gets the reign at number 9 instead of Api Coruscant, who was also absent. In the back row, you got young gun Samuel Fainu alongside captain, and recently extended Alex Seyfarth, so obviously valued there by Benji Marshall. Alex Twal locks the scrum. On the interchange, Latu Fayunu, Royce Hunt, new recruit there, and Jack Bird alongside Sione Fayunu round out their 4-man battery. Tristan Hope, Tony Suka, Kit Lalili, and Solomona Fa'atape a shortened reserve bench compared to the Parramatta Eels. So, look, got some new recruits there, 60s in Skelton, and then obviously on the interchange, Hunt and Bird. You get to see Adam Duahi continue to make his return from, I know he played last year, but, continue to rebuild from that long-term layoff he had going into season 2024. But a lot of young players there for the Tigers, certainly missing some star power across the back line and the spine. And of note there too is absent David Clemmer, because we didn't talk about it in the news portion of his podcast, but he's off to the Dragons apparently. So they're also missing some players or a player in their middle rotation there. So interesting lineup from the Tigers, but it kind of falls in line with what Parramatta are putting out there too, given who we're missing.
Yeah, the Dragons don't mind a player of advanced years.
Yes, Flanagan likes his seasoned players there. Yeah, bit of grit and experience to the roster, and especially through the middle where they've been looking for a difference maker. I don't know if Clemmer can be that guy for him anymore, but he'll give him a solid 40, 50 minutes a week. Yeah.
So, as you said, a lot of players that are missing, and as you read through the Eels lineup, it's going to be a similar story.
Yeah, so we were hoping to see a full-strength Eels lineup, but we had the injury report come out on Tuesday, after I posted Team List Tuesday, of course, but we had managed to talk about it in the news podcast. We have Bowie Simonson targeting a round 4 return. Mitchell Moses and Junior Barlow both nursing foot injuries, plantar fasciitis for Big Junes, and then an unspecified foot injury for Mitch, both of which they'll be fine for round 1 for. So you have to imagine if it was the NRL, they're probably playing, but since you don't need to play, no dramas. But that does shape the team list a bit. At fullback, you got Isaiah Iyongi, who looks to be the clear number 1 candidate now for the number 1 jersey. Not too much of a surprise there. Joash Papali's been a fantastic challenger, but he'll get his chance in due time. On the wings, Sean Russell making his preseason debut. He'll be on the left, I want to say 60s. And I expect him to partner Will Penasini down that side. I know the Eels are being coy about what the configuration is going to be for the centres, but my tip will be Will to switch sides to the left, which sees Zach Lomax making his club debut on the right. He'll partner Jake Tungor provisionally, based on my predictions there, down the right side. Tungor in the box seat for a round 1 game against Melbourne. There are other candidate 60s, but with roster restrictions inside the top 30 in the development squad, Tungor seems to have the edge with Bailey racing the clock massively to be fit. So probably a reasonable look at what the round 1 backline is there with Iyongi, Russell, Penasini, Lomax, and Tungor 1 to 5.
Yes.
And then in the halves, I suppose the big area here, no Mitchell Moses, no Dylan Brown. Mitch nursing that foot issue. But Dylan, I believe, is off to New Zealand for a wedding, so well done to the young man. Well, not his wedding, sorry.
Not his wedding.
Not his wedding, but still.
I think it's his brother's wedding.
I was about to say, well done.
Yeah, I had a bit of a chat with him this morning as he was on his way out of Eels HQ carrying the suit that he'd be wearing at the wedding. So, and he will be travelling back almost immediately after the wedding, I think the day after. So he'll be well and truly back for training next Monday.
He'll be happy to get away from the headlines for a couple of days over in the land of the long white cloud. But yeah, well done to Dylan and his brother there. So hopefully they have a fantastic wedding and reception. That means in the halves, though, there's 2 open slots, and the player who probably impressed among the most or the highest last week in Ronald Volkman, as I was telling the boys, if he has a big game this week, I'm committing to the Ronnie Volkman bit and doing Ronnie Coleman quotes for him all season. Lightweight baby. Of course, Ronnie being the famous power lifter. So we'll get some of that going if he can spin another big game this week. But partnering him, Eric Tweedale, who had a really nice game against the Knights in the second half 60s. A very multi-talented player, came through as a fullback in that SG ball team that took it all on 23, has since shown that he can handle the duties of a 5'8" with aplomb, and he gets a chance to really steal a march on the likes of Dean Hawkins here, because Hawko is absent this week as he navigates a niggle of his own. And Hawkins part of the top 30, no doubt, ahead of guys like Arpa right now, but this is a rare opportunity for Arpa to showcase his wares with a relatively, not quite, but relatively full-strength Parramatta lineup.
Yeah, and showing that versatility last year in the Jersey Flag. He was playing fullback, he was playing centre, he was playing 5'8", and he did all of that with aplomb.
And that kind of versatility is pretty valuable in the modern game. So he's carving out a nice little niche for himself. Hopefully he has a big game against the Tigers. That takes us to the forward pack 60s, and we see another club debutant, Jack Williams. Perhaps the biggest indicator of the sort of ball that Ryles wants to play through the middle. The back rower named in the front row. Preseason standout, one that all of the players, if you listen to the media that the players have been doing, whether it's on the Adokar podcast, the Let's Drop podcast, or just their chats with the press calls and whatnot, Jack's name has popped up regularly as a preseason standout, indeed to the point that he's been part of the leadership group. So he gets a chance to impress in this trial, and he'll partner Woody Wiremu-Greg in the front row.
Yeah, it's what's really interesting about this is, look, I think Jack Williams, by virtue of being named a leader, but also the sort of preseason that he's had, I'm going to lock him in the top 17 for round one. And now that's maybe the captain obvious statement. However, there are players there that are still in the battle, and you've got a lot of them on the bench in this game, which you'll get to, and we'll throw Wiremu-Greg into that.
Yep.
Woody.
Woody's right in the thick of it with his trim new frame. And he didn't put a foot wrong against Newcastle. Didn't star, but had a solid game. There's a bit of talk from some supporters believing that his movement wasn't great, that he looked like he was a bit gassed. I didn't see that. Did you see that? No, I didn't. And if anyone's huffing and puffing in the first week of trials, it's the first week of trials. That is why you have a trial, because you train and train and train. And we know that Jason Ryles has these players, and Blair Mills, have these players highly conditioned. It's just that you can do game-like simulation as much as you want. Nothing is a game-like situation like a game. And so I didn't see Woody blowing gaskets badly. I thought he played a very solid game at the start, but looking forward to more of it, and he's certainly a player that's right in the thick of that contest in that middle rotation. Speaking of in a contest, Joey Lussick getting the nod to start this week. He will start over young gun Rowie Smith, who was impressive against the Newcastle Knights. No surprise that those 60s, because Joey Lussick inside that top 30. Jason Ryles needs to get some meters and some minutes into him, so he'll steer the team around from dummy half. Big nod to potential starters here in the back row, though. Gideon Katonga getting that second start on the left, Kelma Tuolangi on the right. Jermaine Hopgood finally back from a back injury sustained in the State of Origin last year, so very much welcome back, Jermaine. Probably Parramatta's round one back row configuration there, 60s, but with Gideon in particular, got to lock it in terms of that ball possession. Showed some great signs against Newcastle, but you really want to see him not making those errors against the Tigers this week.
Yeah, I think just a couple of times maybe getting a little bit of ahead of himself, and it's just, I guess it's a learning process. He's a player that hadn't established himself as a first grader, but everything that I've seen over the preseason says this is a first grade player. It's like having Kelma Tuolangi on each side of the ruck.
Yep. Agreed. And what we did see against Newcastle, obviously there was a couple of errors, but the potential there was undeniable. He was really creating issues with the initial contact, the ability to free the arm and find support. So on top of good hole running there. So like what I saw there, he'll partner Arpa Tweedale down the left in this game. But the Eels have shown that halves can play both sides of the field. So, I wouldn't be surprised to see Ronnie Volkman popping up on that side too. On the interchange, 3 players making their preseason debuts in 2025. Ryan Madison, Luca Moretti, and Matt Dory there, 14, 15, 16. Good to see all 3 of them getting some game time. Maddo and Moretti, I think I've got them tipped to make the team 60s, but obviously it's a battle. Matt Dory very much in the thick of that battle too. And then joining them after a great game against Newcastle is young gun Sam Tuivasa. Good to see him rewarded for an excellent stint against the Knights. Got through a ton of quality work. So young gun rewarded there. And then to extend the roster, a lot of familiar names from last week. A couple of guys that are also making their preseason debuts as well. But Tony Mattielli, Charlie Geimer, Bryce Cartwright, Dan Keir, obviously making his first game this year. Riley Smith. Curiously, Brendan Hand's named here, but I'm not expecting him to get too much, if any, minutes between Smith and last 60s. But after that, Joash Papali, Josh Adokar. Be interesting to see how many minutes he gets. Jordan Semrani, Arthur Miller-Steven, and Joshua Lynn. Eels making use of that full 28 slots versus the Tigers who are using 21. So Ryles obviously looking to still get some guys minutes here across the table and looking to maybe get more tape for that real tightly fought battle for the last couple of spots on the bench.
Yeah, look, John, I'm expecting that we'll see something similar to what we saw against the Knights in terms of what the Eels are probably going to throw at the Tigers. There may be some spot players where the differences occur, because every team, when they're doing their analysis on the opposition, they're either identifying players to run at in defence. They generally mark down the strengths and weaknesses of the players, and likewise, when in defence, they've got players on their tip sheet that have been identified for what they might do that's a little bit special in attack, but likewise, how you can add a bit of pressure to them in the game. So that's the role of the old tip sheet that coaches work on these days.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting a lot of the same, just with variations around individuals that have featured in the tip sheet. You can generally guarantee with these teams that the spine players in every team feature heavily in every team's tip sheet. What am I looking forward to the most with the team that's out there? Look, John, if I got something similar to last week, where there was a win, where there were no injuries, and you got to see the Eels doing a lot of things right, and a few that still need a bit of work before the season starts, I don't have a problem with that. That to me is the ideal trial. I don't think the coaches care one bit about whether it's a win or a loss. They probably don't want to see walkovers, like just absolute floggings. But really, I don't think it's the result that matters. It's what they see from the individuals out there that they've got earmarked for first grade for the year. And especially the team that's likely to be running out on the field in round one. So, look, I'm probably with you on a couple of things. Like, I'm really keen to see how Arpa goes. But then once you start talking about the inclusion of the 2 centres in Will Penasini and Zach Lomax, it'll be great to see them in action for the first time. I've seen quite a bit of Jack Williams across the pre-season, but yeah, really keen to see how he handles an opponent that he's not used to. Gideon Katonga, if he can just get some of those errors out of the game, and it was only a trial game, so we could argue that maybe there'd be more in in an NRL game with all its pressures and expectations. But I think you don't want to harness in someone like that who's got the confidence to go for plays. You just got to add a little bit of footy nous about when you let go of passes, or just that simple act of it might be the little things like a play the ball or the grip of the ball, but they mean so much. So just simple things like that to get the errors down. But apart from that, I'm really keen to see all the players who didn't get a run last week, how they perform this week. John?
Yeah, I think that's nice and succinct. Like you said, a result not too dissimilar to what we got against Newcastle would be perfect. Healthy win, no injuries, great building stones into round one. I think the Tigers, they didn't name the star-studded lineup. I thought they might, because I thought this one might be a little bit personal after what happened at the end of last season, but they're obviously keeping their powder a little bit dry for round two against us, and also their round one fixture as well. I'm not that arrogant to think that they only circle our games. But, first look at our centres, really exciting. Shawnee Russell, do a job in that left wing. Jake Tungor, how he combines with Zach Lomax is going to be important for round one, so I've got to get that under lock and key. Ronnie Volkman playing for potentially an upgrade here as well, 60s. I know it's early in the season, but the Eels do need to find their 29th player at the end of the preseason, and he is on a train and trial deal, if I'm not mistaken, so plenty on the line for him. But yeah, the back row, really exciting. Jack Williams in the front row. The way they line up, the Tigers haven't got the biggest front row to start either, right? Terrell May, obviously, reasonable front rower, but Fanua Polway is a back rower by trade, moving into the front row. Likewise, Alex Twal, who is a prop technically, but is on the lighter end of the spectrum in terms of his density and thickness. So both teams naming smaller middles, and maybe that'll suit the Eels here. But beyond that, looking forward to Sam Tuivasa on the interchange, Tony Matteoli as well. Young guys there just getting a chance. Hopefully Riley Smith gets some minutes here. And then, Josh Papali, Josh Adokar, where does he play this week? Obviously the wing's an easy option there, but he could feature across the back line, as you alluded to on the Tip Sheet News podcast. I want to get through this one unscathed. That's a big thing for me. It's just the injuries. After what we've been through in the last 24 months, what we've just seen South Sydney undergo in the last 24 hours, getting through this one relatively unscathed will be massive. And I think we're overdue for it, 60s. I think this year the injury gods can turn a blind eye to us because we've paid our dues. And I would love to go into round one, full complement of players potentially available. I know that guys like Bailey Simonson might not be available, but beyond that, the guys that are already available, keep them available. And just get through this one. Win will be nice, but as long as it's a close competitive game, I'm happy.
Yeah, I think we've paid our dues and our next door neighbours' dues.
Yeah, exactly.
As well.
The council is double dipping on the rates for that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, John, I'm going to tip an Eels win. I don't think it's going to be of the magnitude of last week. And as I said, it wouldn't even worry me if the Eels were to drop a trial result, but I think they will get it done. I'm not even going to worry about any sort of scoreline, because how do you pick the scores in a trial match?
Again, not trying to be big-headed, but in the theoretical scenario where the Eels are ahead by a pretty healthy margin, do you see Ryles maybe going for the throat and for that preseason challenge title, or he'll focus on getting minutes into the fringe, like the young guys, the fringe guys, and stick to the game plan if it was on a macro level in terms of getting those systems and players up to speed for round one?
Yeah, I think he's got the bigger picture in mind rather than a few $1,000s for this preseason challenge. When I say a few thousand, what's it worth? 100,000?
100K, I think. Yeah, like not insignificant money, but it can't go to player signings. So it invariably just goes to clubs and I imagine maybe club subsidiaries in the junior district as a token of goodwill. But it'd be nice to have it. But like I said, it's certainly not the most important outcome this weekend.
No, absolutely not. So, John, that brings us to the end of the podcast. Nice and I think relatively quick. How'd we come in time-wise?
49-45 right now. So we squeezed in some news. We talked about the SG ball and then had a good wrap-up of the preview here. So we did okay. It would have been much briefer. I think we would have cut off nearly 10 minutes if it wasn't for the huge news coming out of South Sydney. But we kind of wanted to get on top of that one ahead of the podcast next week just because of that time delay.
It was just too long to wait for the next news podcast.
We did that last week. We forgot to talk about Reed Money getting potentially shopped around from the Bulldogs. We didn't talk about it in the news podcast this week. So that's why we did it, because sometimes news breaks and you forget about
it. Yeah, absolutely. So maybe we can put a little note aside and say, now that time has a bit of water's flown under the bridge with the Reed Marnie situation. What was your takes on what went down there?
I think we can.
And do you believe Gus and et cetera, et cetera. So look, thank you to our listeners for tuning in once again. John, thank you for another fine podcast. Again, a reminder about Parramatta Leagues Club. Please make sure that you cast your vote before this Friday, 5 p.m.
It is so easy to, guys. Literally, there is an email from PLC. You click the link, punch in the PIN code that's in that email, and then it's like 3 screens worth of just voting yes or no. It is so straightforward. Well done to the club and the company they're going through. It is not complicated. So make sure you vote. It takes literally 2 minutes.
Absolutely, and don't just finish your vote with the vote for the directors.
Special resolutions too, please. Special
resolutions. I mean, let's not forget the Peter Wynn for Eels PLC patron, but I think that'll be a popular one. That doesn't need a 75% vote going Peter's way, I don't believe. I could be wrong.
You want to hope it has a 75% vote plus anyway, because Wally's one of the club legends and perfectly fitting for the title of club patron.
Absolutely. But, let's make sure you vote for those special resolutions. They are, as I said, updates and tidy-ups of the the Parramatta Leagues Club constitution, but they are essential. And while ever they're not updated, then there's little things that can come up from time to time that actually annoy members more than anything else. And the club is really trying to look after the members as much as anything else with the 4 resolution, 4 vote in those resolutions.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. For other supporters that would like to get behind us, don't forget you've got Patreon there as an avenue to support the Cumberland Throw with however much you'd like to support us with on a monthly basis. And apart from that, John, as I always say, go you mighty Eels.